Cannabis Media and PCM TV programming is supported by Revolutionary Clinics in Massachusetts, the #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 accounting solution for the cannabis industry. And by TCP's Style Lighting Grow Kit, all you need to. Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information. Hi, everyone. Thank God it's Friday afternoon again and time for the Green Rush Live show from the Boston, Massachusetts area. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to all of the Pro Cannabis Media content because we're getting bigger and bigger guests. And I bring in Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report as my co-host today. And Christopher, good to see you, sir.
Hi, Jimmy. How are you? Good to see you.
Good. As always, a busy week in the world of cannabis. We got the jobs report from Leafly, and we had an incredible move in the New York State area where that state basically offered all the hemp farmers an opportunity to jump right into the cannabis THC world with no other paperwork, which is, I think, a really cool thing. The farmers there are extremely excited, and we'll be talking with one a little bit later on this show because we are going to be focused on the world of hemp. But first, we're going to be talking about the world of cannabis MSOs, and we're so proud to have a CEO of AUSA and Audacious. His name is Terry Booth. He's not the first time he's been on this show. So Terry, again, welcome back to Green Rush Live.
Thanks, Jimmy. Interesting you're talking about hemp. That's the reason I was within minutes of being late for this call. I was on a 2-hour call with the hemp company in New York. So we're all over that. It's an amazing development. It's something that they worked hard on, that farmer community of hemp, and it's passed. It's real, and it's going to be exciting for a first mover advantage in New York State.
Oh, fantastic! I'm glad that you were glad you're familiar with that. Of course, you are. You're the CEO of a major company. Is New York getting it right, Terry?
To be known, right? We've got the final regulation, not the final, the first draft regulation, which is normally the final. Once they put out a draft reg, there's not many changes that you see after. Legislation is done. It's anticipated that comes out in 2 weeks. They certainly want to do the right thing. You know, we've been doing our best to try to help, if you will, with any of the regs, and all companies try and do that. And it gives you some insight into what they're up to and timing of New York State. But the beautiful thing is it's going adult usage, man. And it's not far away. New Jersey's there as well. And, it's a population center, and it's going to be a significant amount of cannabis that trades hands in an adult usage market in New York State. So it's another huge step for the cannabis space in America.
That's great. And Christopher, I know you're familiar with this. It seems that whenever new states come on board, introduce adult use cannabis, they run out really fast. So this is why the New York people decided, the legislature decided this would be a good time to actually get cannabis on the shelves. I'm guessing you believe that's a good move too, right?
Well, sure. It allows them to sort of stock up and have the stores be ready for opening day and for opening week and month. Really, if they had to start at square one and then try to catch up, of course, they would be way behind. So strategically for the first period, of course, it's a good move.
And Terry, what's the latest on Audacious? You seem to be always growing and acquiring and booming. Tell me what's happening.
Well, it's a good testament to this management team. I've not been here a year yet, joined them on March 9th. And in that 1 year, we've gone from only being in Nevada doing $28,000 a quarter to being in Nevada, California, Missouri, working with a group in Massachusetts, obviously all over what's happening in New York, and looking at creative deals to do. The loose deal is wrapped up. The herb deal is almost wrapped up in Cali. We're selling product in California in a good way. We're selling everything we can put on the shelves. So it is a matter of getting product, and the way to get product is either to grow it or acquire it. We're doing both, and that expansion is in process. We finally nailed down some, financing. It wasn't big, but it keeps us rolling along in the same strategy that we have. Certainly, we're waiting for rules to change in the States. I think every cannabis company is. It'd be nice to be able to deduct your expenses from your revenues like regular business folks, and it would be nice to bank. Right. And that's all coming. I said before, I think on the interview, Jimmy, that we take our hats off to the U.S. cannabis space on how they've managed to continue the wave, to continue to grow, to continue to make state by state better. Sure, there's been some, screw ups along the way. Some of the social equity wasn't done like it was meant to be done in some of the states. You're seeing that. But, when you mention New York, is it going to be a good system? They're certainly trying to correct any previous mistakes that may have been made in, in the social equity piece, and in you see with the hemp farmers, letting them into the play. They had a terrible go of it, if you will, on the hemp side. The regulations weren't quite cut out or made what they expected to be doing with CBD derived from hemp. And guess why? I think you could look to the FDA a little bit. Not approving the ingestible, even though the World Health Organization said it was cool. But then the FDA has been pretty busy with this COVID thing. So, it's a bunch of different factors still lead to growth. It's still moving forward. And I applaud the U.S. cannabis space for doing that, and a bunch of great entrepreneurs and good folk.
We're trying here. Christopher, I'm going to allow you to ask Terry a direct question, because I know you are really good at that.
I think that's a great point, Terry. I think it's so important for us to recognize that we're in the middle of this great development of this. We're not at the end looking backwards. We're not in a mature industry looking backwards. We're in the very beginning stages. The Leafly report just came out this week, and I thought that the jobs numbers, for example, were very interesting. It showed that the cannabis jobs have increased 30% since last year. It's now there are more workers in cannabis than a great number of more industries, three times more than dentists. I read things like that. But I thought that there was something very interesting in the report that was way back a little bit, which is that the economics group that did the research determined that the industry was really only about 25% on the legal side. So 75% of the industry still in the United States is still on the illicit side. So there's a huge way to go. What do you think about the opportunity going forward, and especially with your company?
On the gray market side, you're right. In California, you really see that, and it does affect the progress in California. California itself is difficult to navigate towards profitability unless you're in the multiple verticals, and then you pick your poison on the different municipalities, because then there's a different set of rules there.
Right.
But they also have the gray side of the market on the West Coast, and in some of the interior states, and it's big. It's a big industry. And how do you transition from that one to the next? Some of the states are looking at bringing in, with open arms, those industry pioneers, I like to call them. Passing that baton is an important transition. Being part of the community culture, respecting that as a company is important, in my opinion. That's what we're all about. But to hear those numbers, doesn't it make you smile? How we're affecting
Absolutely.
in a positive way. And I imagine some other statistics have gone down, like opiate usage as well. We've certainly seen that in the medical system in Canada. Proof positive, like not something we're saying, and we've proven it. So you take the medical systems, the adult usage systems. Not everybody is driving into the back of cars either. Everybody,
right.
all the fear factors that went into
right.
the stigma related to cannabis are waning. They're going
Sure.
away, and the acceptance of it is amazing. And I love to see those economic numbers, because that's what your Politico will listen to. Employed people contributing to the bottom line at the tax house. important stuff. So
Sure.
it's all great stuff, and I'm glad Leafly puts out those type of reports. I haven't read it. I'm embarrassed. I've got to get on that type of stuff and be better at it.
Ah.
But it sounds great.
Yeah, it just came out, and there are those high level bullet points about the number of jobs and the percentages and how many more hairstylists and dentists, and those things are novelty. They're interesting cocktail talk and everything. But I think that the growth of the industry is so important. The other thing I think is interesting, you mentioned the FDA, and it seems to me that we have sort of it's almost like the grown-ups are fighting, right? We have the FDA and the DEA, the Food and Drug Administration fighting to understand what should be allowed and to help protect the health of people. And we have the Drug Enforcement Administration fighting for their own budget, fighting to keep their slice, fighting to keep down cannabis, et cetera, et cetera. That seems to be the battle
Well,
in the federal government here.
I got one more for you. The Department of Agriculture just came out with their hemp report this week too. So my question to Terry, I'm going to just take it right from you, Christopher. Great points.
Sure.
Where would you like to see this industry regulated? Should it be under one specific in the United States, whether that be the ABC, the DEA, or the DOA, which is Department of Agriculture? Where do you think it's going to end up on the federal side as far as regulations and governance?
God forbid it's not with the DEA.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
To check off. I imagine FDA would be sort of where it should be. It is, especially when you get into the medical cannabis, that should be FDA, right? The Department of Health and whatnot. Agriculture for sure. I mean, they're the ones that did this amazing thing with moving it from the CDSA hemp, CBD derived from hemp rather. Big step. America were the first to do it. And I think they put themselves at a distinct advantage, but there's just this lag in the FDA approving the ingestible. We did a deal in Southeast Asia with a group now where they've legalized the ingestible CBD. We're the first American or any North American company to do a deal with legal CBD with a group in Thailand. So it's moving forward in other countries, and America is going to be a little bit behind it if they don't get on this decision on the ingestible side of it. And that goes to the agricultural point you're making, Jimmy. I don't know what that report looks like. I don't imagine it looks that great for what went down in hemp, but that happens. Everybody ran to it. They're going to run back to their lentils. It is a difficult plant to grow. It's a difficult plant to harvest. If you've ever seen hemp get combined, I've certainly seen it in the food hemp industry. It's very, very tough plant. It's a thick stalk. You need special equipment. You don't want to be laying it in the dirt when you're going to be selling it for food. So it has to go onto a conveyor system. So that equipment is in Lithuania, but it's not fully in America yet. And that really hurt with yields and then the price of CBD, right? Because CBD has still got a little bit of a cloak on it. It's not being widespread in the CPG industry. Everybody's confident in doing CBD topicals. You're not going to get busted for that. But to put it on the shelves of big box in a gummy, not there yet. To put it in a sport drink, not there yet. Is it around the corner? Hell yeah. And that's going to be a massive expansion of CBD. And at least the technology has caught up to some extent where they're able to totally remove THC. And that'll be a requirement when it goes mainstream in the CPG industry. But the THC industry as well, this adult usage, when you compare it to alcohol, for instance, or other illicit drugs, it's just so much safer. The only way you can get killed by cannabis if a bale drops out of an airplane on top of your head and snaps your neck. Those are important things. They may be fun to say, but they're true. And that's the movement, and that's why it's having success. Once the states are confident and they feel good, and it didn't wreck other states, these pioneer states that went at it, and Cali and the Colorados and Washingtons and whatnot, they're seeing nothing but benefits from having this as a part of their economy. A bit of a long question or a long answer to a short question, but I do see agriculture really taking over the hemp industry, and I do see hemp taking over CBD. I think that will be outside of the, let's call it the MSO space, where adult usage is the prime mover and certainly brings the bigger dollar. But CBD is going to be in demand, and it's going to make the farmers a lot happier. So I think you'll see that hemp report improve over time as CBD comes into mainstream.
We just started a show about growing called Calling All Growers. It's hosted by Liz Grow, High Times TV personality. And I've also gotten a crash course in sustainable cultivation. I was at a growing conference a few weeks ago that brought growers from Humboldt County, the Emerald Triangle, to the East Coast for the first time to talk about organic farming. Terry, what's your opinion, and what's the company's rulings about sustainable cultivation?
That's cool that you asked that. Maybe it's because you're having me today, but we're all over that. And we're on top of that with our group from Alps. And it's not just with respect to cannabis. Sustainable environmental governance is a big thing right now on the planet. And it's an important thing that you reduce those footprints for when you're growing food, right? And it applies to cannabis as well, reducing that carbon footprint. Alps is doing deals in Dubai, in Iceland, and in America on the vertical grow for lettuce and tomatoes. I always use the example of growing a carrot on a farm in Mexico and shipping it to Alaska in a truck. And how much does that impact the environment, the diesel fuel that it's using? And when the carrot gets to Alaska, you could whip a horse with it. It's not a high quality vegetable. We can build a facility in Alaska that has the same price or similar pricing to what they're paying now for their import of produce, have a dramatically reduced environmental footprint, and be attractive to SEG companies like Blackstones and whatnot, who are all over this SEG space. So it's important for cannabis to jump on that bandwagon. It's important for organic growth to be out there. Organic is not only a great word, it's better tasting vegetables. I always espouse that with my wife. She's big on organics. You better eat them quick though, because the organics don't stay as long because they've zapped the shit out of the other vegetables that you're buying, but they taste better. And there's reasons for that. And it's not going away. What's it called? Genetically modified GMO. Like that's a swear word in Europe. GMO is just not something that happens. It's something you put in your mouth in Europe. And it's exactly. So I'm all over it. The Mr. Natural brand that Audacious has coming online. I think we've now got some products out there. It's all about organic growth. Bob Luciano, the Rastafarian priest, Vietnam War vet from the Bronx, amazing grower. He's grown cannabis longer than I've been alive, and he's an organic grower of cannabis, and mainly bases his cultivars and his products on veterans. He's a Vietnam War vet as well, and he's an organic grower, and it is a better plant in my opinion. It's more expensive to grow that, but your connoisseurs love it, and certainly the profiles of those plants can be improved, and the way you grow organically can be improved, and it is. The guys are doing it out there, and the gals are doing it. So it's great that she has that show, and it's all about educating each other to put the best products forward as an industry.
Right. And she and I also had the opportunity to interview perhaps one of the most well-known farmers of cannabis in the world. He, of course, is known as an actor comedian, Jim Belushi, this week. And that was a thrill for me because I've always been a big fan of his. How important is it to have these kinds of names embrace the cannabis movement in the United States and Canada and the world?
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? The influencers. You have to have legit influencers for sure. Right. I mean, a lot of people will sell their name for the name, but it's important to have those types of organizations and people on board. The PBR, the Professional Bull Riders Association, that's an association. When you affiliate yourself with one individual, you do take a bit of a risk that individual might screw something up. But when you're affiliating yourselves with leagues and associations like the NFL and the NBA and those types of things, those are very impactful on the industry. Just look at what Canopy did back in the day when Constellation Brands came to the table, Corona, a large beverage company. So every little piece helps, and the Belushis and Snoop and those people who have put their name and reputations forward, God bless them. Hats off.
Hey, last question. I want to ask you about the emerging markets in Europe. What's going on there?
Well, look at very, very sad to see what's going on in Europe right now.
Well, needless to say, they're a little busy. They're not worried about cannabis. Although I got to tell you, Terry, what would be nice is if everybody would just put their weapons down and sit around and talk and maybe share a joint, that's not going to happen. I understand.
Yeah. Take it easy. Really take it easy.
Yeah.
UK, awesome. You know, they've got a decent entry, both on the CBD side and the medical THC side. They've really taken the time to plan it. You see in Germany, stepping up the medical market. It's continuing to grow. Australia continuing to grow. Not as fast as we thought when we were back in the day 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago at Aurora. I thought everybody would be on pace with Canada. They're not. You know, it's a slower grow, but the fact is it's growing. You've heard me say it before. Today is the smallest the cannabis industry will ever be. Right? And tomorrow it'll be bigger once again. But Asia as well, you know, outside of Europe, they're advancing. You know, Thailand has agreed now to have THC. They're probably a year away. You know, they were a signatory on the UN Convention in '72, so they have to do the work. You take it out of the hands of the kids, you reduce the illegal, and you make the stuff safe. But that'll you know, they're competitive nations. Other nations will take that on. It's different in America where the states are competitive, but it was more done from a righteous point of view than a business point of view. That this is a good medicine, and that's why you have these 50 different countries in America. But they'll become aligned, and I look forward to the day when we can, you know, cross state lines with high quality cannabis.
Yeah. Oh, like that isn't happening now. Wink, wink. Right? I mean, come on. Right? We all know it is, but you know, let's make it official, right? Let's actually have a crop, maybe even a commodities market at some point, a future of cannabis.
Let's legalize it. Let's stop the bullshit. It's time.
Sure.
Once they make the decision, it's still going to take time, but let's make the time to use the time appropriately. It's time.
Absolutely. And speaking of time, it's Friday afternoon at 4:20-ish. It's usually when we take our break. Terry Booth, thank you so much for joining us again. You are welcome on this program at any time. And I'm going to I'll work with Sasha on this, that grower that you mentioned, to see if we might be able to get them on our Calling All Growers show, which I think you'll enjoy.
Good stuff. Yeah, he would contribute in a big way. He's a character and a half. Mr. Natural, Bob Luciani.
And I remember Mr. Natural, the cartoon. Okay, so that dates me at that. I understand. Terry Booth, thank you again. We're going to take our first break. As always, 4:20, we play Shanty from Jonathan Edwards. It's my thing, if you will, because when I was a kid, we were using back in the 70s, we heard Shanty, we had to go and partake, if you will. So now we're going to partake in a little music and a few messages from our sponsors and our supporters. And we say thank you again to Terry Booth from Audacious. Take care.
Thanks, Terry.
Sure. Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, you know, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm going to sit down in my rented car. I'm going to jam it into drive. I'm going to head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Green Rush Live. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. We're here live every single Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern to talk about the business of cannabis. Usually I'm joined by many different guest hosts, co-hosts, if you will. Sometimes it's David Rabinovich. Sometimes it's Debra Borchardt. Sometimes it's all of the above. And in this particular episode, I've got Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report alongside. Christopher, as always, thank you so much.
Hi there, Jim. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. And now we're going to welcome in a couple of guys that know a little something about the hemp world. Morris Beegle, he's the co-founder of NoCo, Hemp Expo, the publisher and host of Let's Talk Hemp, and the president and co-founder of the WAFBA, WAFBA. So Morris, I'm going to put you right on the spot here. What does WAFBA stand for?
Well, Jimmy, first off, thanks for having me on. And second off, it's WAFBA, not WAFBA. So
that's that Boston accent. Don't ask him to say Worcester.
Yeah, that's right.
You East Coasters, I tell you, but WAFBA is We Are for Better Alternatives.
Gotcha. I like that. And I appreciate that. And I think the guy also in the room with us today, John Freese, he's the founder and CEO of Metolius Hemp Company out of Oregon. John, did I butcher anything there?
No, you're good, Jimmy. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. And I see a very friendly face that has joined us. Debra Borchardt from the Green Market Report and Crane Media. Debra, good to see you, and a surprise to see you, but you're always welcome here.
I'm sorry, it's a surprise. I
Okay.
crashed the party, I guess.
It's all right. Join in. You get to ask all the questions you need to ask. We appreciate your presence alone anytime. I do want to.
Superstars are welcome, Debra.
That's right. Superstars are welcome. Hey, let's get right into the hemp world, guys. The United States Department of Agriculture did put out its hemp report. Morris, have you had a chance to take a look at any parts of that or even the summaries?
Well, to a degree, yeah. We published it in Let's Talk Hemp, and it's obviously been shared in a lot of different media sources. I work with a gentleman named Bo Whitney, who has Whitney Economics and has done similar reports. And there's other people who have done similar reports. And this is the first time the USDA has done something to this scale, which is great. It's good information. Although I do believe that some of it is underreported as far as the actual acreage that was harvested. And there's various things that aren't completely accurate, but it is a good starting point. Finally, after this, the last 10 years where we've been really starting to get this off the ground, at least we're starting to get some data coming out from the USDA. And while it might not be 100% accurate, it's a good starting point.
John, do you echo those thoughts? And what do you think is the biggest challenge for the hemp industry as you see it?
I think kind of the biggest challenge is just the level of saturation that's out there in regards to brands and companies and products. And when you really look at it, a large percentage of quote unquote industrial hemp companies are contract manufacturing entities. They're brands, which is great. But I don't think that really drives much innovation. And in the end, if you're a celebrity or an athlete or an individual and you've got the capital resources by which to do it, you can easily launch a brand. And we've been approached for that exact purpose. But I just think that's probably the biggest issue is consumers are looking at 1,600 plus brands, many of them launching extremely similar products, if not exactly the same product with just a different label. So I'm not super concerned about the regulatory component as much as I'm concerned about consumers getting the best possible products as we learn more about the cannabinoids and the plants.
And Debra, you now have a hemp report, do you not?
Well, we were going to break out a hemp website, but it just became too much. So we just really cover it within Green Market Reports reporting. We do often cover the Hemp Benchmarks monthly report that I find to be pretty interesting. And like the USDA report kind of doesn't give a whole lot of context. It just says, here's the snapshot for 2021. And while that's super helpful, it also doesn't say that, okay, when we look back, what were the prices in 2020 and before that? Because then you would see a real contraction in the amount of acres that have been planted. And you also see a real contraction in the price. So to the gentleman's point, we've seen so much competition in such a difficult area that a lot of the farmers started plowing under their fields because it was costing them more to process it than to actually get it to market. And then a lot of the biomass that ended up in the market has been sitting there for months and months and months, and with very few customers to unload to. What I think is really kind of interesting is that we know New York State tried to give it a little boost this week with Governor Hochul kind of greasing the roads there for the hemp farmers. I'm kind of more interested that, according to Hemp Benchmarks, is that the hemp industry is looking for many ways to use the product and looking at perhaps hemp grains to feed animals and things of that nature. And I think that's super promising and kind of gets the hemp farmers less dependent upon CBD.
Morris, do you echo those thoughts?
Well, yeah. And I would like to say that, industrial hemp traditionally is fiber and grain. It's not cannabinoids. And this cannabinoid thing really started in 2014, 2015, when we approved hemp with the first Farm Bill in 2014 for pilot programs and so forth. And all of a sudden, here comes CBD and the true nature of industrial hemp with building materials and bioplastics and textiles and paper pulps and carbon sequestration all got kind of lost in the mix. And now that's coming back around, and we're seeing the push for building materials and fiber and grain and like she just said, animal feed. And I do want to say that this has been stagnated in large part because of the FDA and the FDA not properly regulating CBD as a dietary supplement and a food and beverage ingredient. It's chilled the market from an investment standpoint. It's just really deterred a lot of people from getting involved. And here it is. We've got all these CBD brands, and John mentioned 1,600. It was like 4,000 until COVID hit and this contraction of everybody going out of business. And but still 1,600 doing virtually very, very similar products. I do think that in the long run, though, there's a great opportunity for hemp, and it's going to continue to grow. And we just got to get past these regulatory hurdles, get the FDA to do their job, which, again, they have not. And animal feed, here's a perfect example where here comes grain. You process the grain as a farmer. Let's say you get 1,000 pounds. 20% of that can't even go into human consumption because of size and a variety of quality issues. And so it's a perfect animal feed. The FDA and some other groups say, hey, we need more research. We don't know the health, if there's going to be adverse reactions and so forth, because there could be residual THC or CBD and cannabinoids and stuff. And what's really funny about that is hemp grain is one of the most nutritious substances that's out there. And yet approved ingredients that the FDA has allowed into the animal feed stream, sawdust, Fruit Loops, cyanide, and all kinds of other crap. And I can tell you right now, one of the big hindrances of the FDA approving this is the commodities market, such as corn and soy and others that are saying, put the brakes on this. We don't want it here. Just like the pharmaceutical industry has said to the FDA, don't allow CBD and cannabinoids as dietary supplements, because you know what? We really want those things. Yeah. So FDA, you go F yourself.
I like
How
that.
do you really feel?
That's right.
Well,
and by the way,
I can continue on if you really want to know how I feel. I'm just getting started.
Hey, and you knocked Fruit Loops, one of my favorite cereals. Okay, I'm heartbroken. Christopher, I'm going to let you kind of dictate the conversation here, so you can get some hosting experience on Green Rush Live. Are you ready for that?
I am ready. I'm working with the pros, and I'm ready to go. One of the big issues I think that people may not quite understand, maybe listeners even, is that the difference between the THC side, the marijuana side, and CBD side, both of those are the cannabis plant grown for flower. And then you go to the other side, which is the industrial side. You have grain, like you said, and then textiles, etc. Well, those all have seeds. So are you worried at all, for example, about opening up the hemp farmers to growing cannabis? But the hemp farmers in New York State, the hemp farmers are growing product with seeds, but the cannabis wants to grow with flowers. Are you worried that there's going to be just a simple cross-pollination problem? This is a biology question, right?
Let John go ahead, John.
John?
Yes. So we're not. We've been farming for 5 years. We're vertically integrated every single year. We've planted the same company's genetics, Oregon CBD seed company out of Oregon, two PhD brothers. They're one of the best easily. And we started with a couple of strains of their CBD cannabis plants, and you nailed it. I mean, I think the vast majority of consumers understand that we're truly dealing with a cannabis plant, not the fibrous, stocky industrial hemp back when the country was quote unquote founded. And they are truly plants that over many, 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 many years of breeding went from high levels of THC, low CBD, and then up. And so we've been fortunate to do it for 5 years, but I got to be honest, cross-pollination is definitely an issue for many farms. We're fortunate enough that our farm is far enough away from any other farms, and all the farms around ours are also CBD farms, and they actually grow the same exact genetics. And as you know, the science and the breeding has gotten to a point to where you have auto flowering, you have non-pollinating genetics, you have lots of different options. But I think in the end, what really seems to matter here is that I think every form of farming, and hemp is probably one of the most recent examples of it, gets commoditized too quickly. In the beginning, everybody wanted the flower, right? And then quickly everybody wanted the biomass. Then everybody wanted to extract it into distillate and isolate and sell byproducts. And in the end, the farmers' margins just got lower and lower. And like you said, just a second ago, Debra, they ended up churning it through. So for us, we're moving heavily to non-smokable products, and we have. This is a 5 gram Cannagar. So this is 5 grams of CBD, CBG flower. It's an organic cigar replacement, non-psychoactive, federally legal, right? That's got 2 types of flower in it. Then we've got our pre-rolls, 1 gram and 2 gram. Okay, this is where we started the company, but now these are not our best sellers. Our best sellers are these lip dips. Okay, this takes organic isolate, organically derived isolate and magnesium. I actually give these to our artistic son. They replace dip and chew like Zyn. We have sleep powder that replaces Ambien and Lunesta. We literally have people getting off their prescription drugs. This has CBN in it. And then, of course, we've got the traditional topicals. And now we have 100 milligram CBD capsules. And so what we're finding is that it takes such a nominal amount of CBD, CBG, CBN, CBDV to actually have a significant impact on consumers through their endocannabinoid system, depending on what particular health outcomes they're looking for. And obviously, inhaling it or vaporizing it has one of the most efficacious forms of bioavailability, but consumers just want what they're used to. And so they want form factors that are very similar. So if you, just to give you a sense, when we were farming, and I know I'm talking for a long time here, we went from 1 farm to 4 farms to co-owning 7 farms, about 82 acres of material. That year, we made less profit than anything. We're now down to growing 4 acres a year, because we're the only company that's using our flower and then creating the byproducts of distillate or isolate from it, and of course, consumer products. So I think one of the reasons we're seeing a massive contraction in the number of farmers is because 1, it got massively commoditized. 2, the industry was full of a lot of individuals that were coming from the black market, weren't doing good business, and a lot of people didn't get great business deals done or lost hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And then 3, and I think most importantly, is we don't need that many plants to get the medical benefit out of the plant if we're producing the right innovative products. And that's our perspective. So who wants to manage 80 acres or 200 acres or 2,000 acres if it's just going to be a race to the bottom? And ultimately, in the end, whether it's the FDA, right, pharmaceutical companies that are trying to synthesize these and make massive ongoing profits, that's just going to be one more issue. So I think farmers are hip to the game. They're like, this isn't worth it for me.
I think it's worth mentioning, kind of building on that, is that the Ireland-based firm Research and Markets believes that the U.S. minor cannabinoids, which are the CBG and the CBN, which he just mentioned, that market's expected to reach $26.2 billion by 2028. That's a compounded annual growth rate of 20%. So that section of the market seems to be getting a lot of demand, which is super interesting. And it kind of supports what you're saying, is that's where you've kind of started to shift into that area.
I feel like that's where it needs to go. As we learn more and more about the major and minor cannabinoids and their efficacy for various, medical conditions, right, pre-existing issues, et cetera. And again, I know we can't say very much because of FDA regulations, but with that being stated, our customers will tell us, right? Your customers will tell you. Are you going to take a 5 gram Cannagar and light it up if you've never smoked in your life or don't love cigars? No. Are you going to light up this pre-roll, often seen as a joint? No. But would you take this capsule that looks exactly like every single supplement you've got? It's all organic and ultimately delivers what is probably the equivalence of the efficacy of like 3 or 4 Advil, and you can get it for a similar price. Yeah, it's a natural solution. So I think that's where the industry has to go. Why are we growing so much? Especially like Debra said earlier, when the waste is as significant as it is. There are farms in Central Oregon where we're at that still have biomass and flower from 2018 season.
Mm-hmm. I also, there was also some other good news this week that I think is worth mentioning, is that in the industrial hemp side that we were kind of mentioning before, the hempcrete, that it was submitted as an appendix in the International Residential Codes by the U.S. Hemp Building Foundation. So that's been one of the things that's been holding hempcrete back, is that the building codes couldn't really address it. And so it was really hard if people were trying to do something with a hempcrete product because it didn't fit the building codes. And I'm married to an architect, so I know what happens when you go for a building permit and you have to submit drawings. If you're coming in with a product that they're not familiar with, that they can't quite match up to the codes, it's just a nightmare. So anybody that's been trying to do this has always run into this problem. So that's at least really encouraging to see that we're starting to get to that certification and standardization level so that it becomes easier.
Mhm.
That's good news.
Hey, there's another item that I picked up on after reading the 20 odd newsletters I read every week, that including the Green Market Report, that goes from, they're talking about taking the amount of THC in hemp from 0.3% to 1%. Morris, let's get your reaction to that. Is that just window dressing?
No, I've been a proponent for the 1% thing from the get-go. This 0.3% has always been arbitrary. And really, 1% is the next step. And then end use is really the final destination and the final goal. There's no reason that we should put this burden on farmers where this plant, which that grows naturally, should be prohibited by some arbitrary regulation that if it goes over a certain percentage, then the farmer has to burn it. They lose all their money. When all this stuff can be mitigated downstream in processing and manufacturing. If it's going to go in for human consumption or animal consumption or whatever, and it needs to have 0% THC or less than 0.3%, that can easily be done. But if it's going to go into a product that's non-consumable, let's say for paper, pulp, building materials, bioplastics, textiles, who cares if it was grown at 20%? There's no reason a farmer should be punished for this. All this stuff can easily be mitigated downstream, and I'm all for 1%. And that's, again, we don't want to punish farmers. We want to reward farmers and support farmers, because without farmers, we're not going to eat. We're not going to be able to have a life here on planet Earth.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I actually was introduced to something that the farming industry, I think, is going to be very interested to hear more about. And it has to do with some legalese. Yes, it was a law firm who explained this to me. They may have found a way to reduce your taxes from, right now, hey, John, what is the percentage of taxes that you have to give up for your crop? 50%?
No, it's dependent on how much we purchase of our own crop, essentially, and then we're taxed on that.
Okay, and what percentage is that? 50?
Oregon's, I think it ends up running around 23%, I want to say.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I think it's in that realm.
I'm not quoting anybody on anything, okay?
This is Pro Cannabis Media.
The talk show. It's a talk show, for crying out loud. We're talking here.
It's 420%. No,
okay. 420%. I picked out that. Okay. So this may help you because they believe that they have found a way to reduce that taxable crop. I'm not going to explain it because I am not a lawyer. However, next Friday on this show, Green Spoon Martyr and Nick Richards, who's one of the principals at Green Spoon Martyr, will be explaining that. And they think they can absolutely revolutionize the farming industry to the point where you guys can actually make more money on the margin that you deserve, not what you have right now. So tune in. That's a tease. Is that a tease? Would you like to save money on your crop?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right.
100%.
All right, good. So that's next Friday. It was a shameless plug, but I had to do it. Christopher, you got something? Because I got something if you don't.
Yeah, I'm just more interested again. Maybe it's more toward Morris. You had said that there was such a huge dive into the industry, and the farmers got creamed basically, and now they've all sort of pulled back. The news is all very much of a turmoil. Do you find that? And you also mentioned plastics, paper, textiles, and sort of the other streams of the industry or industrial hemp. Are you seeing that other industries are reaching up or growing up to assume or grab some of that product, or is there still an imbalance between the supply that the farmers are able to deliver and the actual demand from other industries? I'm just wondering.
Well, there is a demand at this point, and unfortunately, here in the United States, we've been growing for cannabinoids predominantly, like 90%
Right.
plus. Whereas that number is going to shift, and you're going to see this go to traditional farmers, and not necessarily kind of this horticulture thing with the cannabis side, who jumped into the market doing CBD and growing it, in greenhouses and small plots, and again growing it more like marijuana. You're going to see
Right.
traditional farmers that are row cropping, growing corn and soy and wheat and this, start to rotate it in, and we're going to boost this supply. So we've got a much higher level of supply of grain, of fiber, where the building industry and the plastics industry and the automotive industry, who can use it for car paneling, can feel confident that they can utilize this material in their supply chain, because they know that we're going to be able to produce it. It's being done in Europe. It's not necessarily being done that much in Canada, at least from the fiber side. It is from the grain side, but you're going to see the U.S. really shift to this. And over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, there's a lot of different reports out there that project that we'll have in the millions of acres. And again, this is going to really be grown specifically for fiber and grain. The cannabinoid side will be what it is and get regulated, and there will be 50,000 acres grown a year, or 40,000, whatever it is, to supply the market for cannabinoids. And again, that's going to depend on product innovations like John's doing with his big cigars. And there's the innovation that will come down the road will really determine the market demand.
I want to bring up a term that I learned a lesson from a local guy here in Massachusetts, who has a hemp museum that he sets up and enlightens people about the plant. And he taught me something, and I constantly hear references to hemp, and these cannabinoids are not intoxicating, but they do have psychoactivity. So when you hear people say there's no psychoactive effect in this because it's a CBD product, he says that's not true, because the cannabinoids do have an effect on the neurotransmitters in our brain, but it is not intoxicating. Is that worth even discussing as an issue, the reporting of this industry? I guess, John, I'm going to ask you that. Go ahead.
100%. I agree with them. I mean, let's just real quickly. So, this pre-roll, for example, is 50% CBD organic flower and 50% CBG. We spray the exterior with tea-free distillate, broad spectrum distillate, right? The oil from the plant with the remediated or removed THC. We then cover it in CBD isolate, which is the white side, and then we cover the other side with CBG keep. So there's 5 different forms of either flower or byproduct in one pre-roll, okay? Well, why do we do that? Well, because when you get a hemp pre-roll or a CBD pre-roll, the level of cannabinoids in it are relatively low. If it's poor flower, poor genetics, right? It would be akin to drinking a light beer versus a really, really well-developed and homebrewed stout. But then on top of that, what are the efficacy points of CBD versus CBG? And in the end, what you get is exactly what he described. There is an effect. We call it the CBD high, or the CBG clarity, or the CBN sort of relaxation or restful elements that come with it. And so there's no question it changes the physiology, because what it's doing, right, is it's immediately hitting the one thing that's in every mammal on the planet, which is the endocannabinoid system, which, by the way, most of us are either deficient in, or in many cases, excessively high in particular areas. But in the end, yes. So for example, when people smoke this particular pre-roll, they tell us things like, I have this sort of sense of calm. I feel clear in my mind. I feel a little more like I can be a little more artistic or creative. And these are very like ethereal things, right? But the truth of the matter is what's absolutely doing is it's decreasing inflammation in the body. It is helping modulate mood. It is helping impact energy levels. It is helping regulate sleep. It's all proven. And so when you mix and match them and you try and get the best results, then that's what you're going to get. And so I think this delineation of industrial hemp for fiber, right, for paper, for fuel, and what is known as basically no or low THC cannabis plants, this is the medicine. That's the solution for everything from farming to building to the energy crisis that we're about to get even deeper into with what's going on over in Russia. So I think in the end, there's no question it has an impact. And that's why people want it. I got to be honest. The conversion of people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s starting to use our products and other companies in our space's products is for one reason and one reason only. It works. If it didn't work for them, the stigma would be too much. The price point would be too much. And so when they come back and they say, I honestly haven't slept that well in 12 years and I'm getting off of these 3 pharmaceutical drugs, I can't think of a more purposeful thing for us to focus on as a company. And so, yeah, it has an effect and I'm glad it does. And it's one plant with a ton of iterations. And let's find out as much as we can about it because it's about 1/1,000,000th, they say 1/1,000,000th the cost of bringing a pharmaceutical drug to market to bring a new cannabis product to market. So I don't know what to say.
No, you said a lot, and
faster
more.
and sustainable, renewable.
You said plenty, and Morris was doing this the whole time. Okay, so he was agreeing with you.
Well, I think it is worth mentioning, though, Jimmy, that there's been a lot also in the news about that there's a lot of concern about some hemp farmers that are really actually growing hemp as a cover to grow illegal market cannabis. And that started to kind of hit a lot of headlines this week as well, which I hadn't really had a lot of time to dump into that, but I have seen that started to get a lot of attention, that some people are doing this and just saying, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know it came in so hot, but that they're actually really doing it intentionally. So unfortunately, with everything, there's always a few bad players, and I hope that that's not widespread, because that could certainly hurt the overall market if you do have a few bad players. But it is cannabis industry. It's an illegal industry to begin with. So it's always like that push and pull of, okay, well, you had some bad actors in here, but then aren't we all bad actors, I guess?
Well, law enforcement, to be fair, law enforcement is always going to say that there are bad actors in our industry. No matter what you tell them, they're going to tell you about the bad actors. They're going to tell you about the hoop farms that are out in the desert and they're stealing the water and they're poisoning the armadillos. They're going to tell you all that all the time. I mean, it's been that way for 100 years. It's all part of the mythology of the evil weed and all of it, right? Yeah. And so it's, I mean, I hate to sound like a conspiracy theory, but conspiracy theorist, but boy, that's what we get from the other side.
Morris, I know you were chomping at the bit to try, chip in here on some comments. Go ahead.
Prohibition has created so many problems. I'm just going to say that we should have never prohibited this plant to begin with, and prohibition has created a lot of bad actors.
Right, and we're human, and humans make mistakes, and also try and cut corners sometimes and try and get away with it. And Debra, you made the point, it wasn't a legal industry, and it still is at the federal level. So for decades, people were breaking the law technically, but using a product that improved their lives in whatever capacity they could. And we didn't know what we know now about this plant back in the 70s and 80s. So it's humans are always looking to do square corners and cut corners. I mean, it's just part of the human nature. We're always looking for shortcuts, and there's always going to be the bad apple out there, right?
Yeah, but the irony,
that's true. Certainly we have, good players on the pharmaceutical side. GW Pharmaceuticals, also, I guess, better known as Jazz now, because they got acquired by Jazz. But all the good that they're doing for people that have, these epileptic diseases, and the prescriptions are going well and continuing to grow, and they wouldn't do well and grow if people weren't actually being helped by it. I mean, we certainly saw that with Marinol, which is a synthetic product, but the scripts never kept up. People would fill them once or twice and then they left it because they were so dissatisfied with that with that drug and with that prescription. So certainly there is a case to be made for all the good that has happened.
go. Hey, we're up against the top of the hour, as we used to say in the radio business. So I want to thank you guys, your panelists, for coming on today. Morris, let's talk hemp, right? Subscribe, like, and share.
Exactly. And also NoCo Hemp Expo. We're coming up on our 8th annual one at the end of March, March 23rd through the 25th, NoCoHempExpo.com, biggest hemp expo in the world.
There you go. And John, how do people get your hemp product legally?
Just go to metoliushemp.com. That's metoliushemp.com. And we can now ship almost all of our products to all 50 states and all of our products to 46 states. So I apologize, North Dakota and Idaho and Iowa.
They should apologize to you.
Right?
They should. That's right. That's right. So, and Deborah, can you hang out, or do you have something to go, someplace to be?
I can hang out for a little bit.
All right, that's fine. And if it's all good, Debra Borchardt from the Green Market Report, and Christopher, you're going to hang out. We're going to take a break, come back with a member of the New York Cannabis Growers and Processors Association. He's going to be the one with the big smile on his face. His name's Allan Gandelman. Don't go away. We'll have more. It is everything you need to become an expert. Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It is everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Pro Cannabis Media and PCM TV programming is supported by Revolutionary Clinics in Massachusetts, the #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 accounting solution for the cannabis industry. And by TCP's Style Lighting Grow Kit. All
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Welcome back to the second hour of Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled live streamed Business of Cannabis show. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. This week, I'm joined by the host of the American Cannabis Report, Christopher Smith. Christopher, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining us again today.
Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
And now we're joined by two other people from different parts of the country. One is a New York-based farmer, and the other is a Texas-based farmer. So let's start with Allan Gandelman, because there was a major news story out of New York State, and he's the president of the New York Cannabis Growers and Processors Association. And Allan, when we talked earlier this week, you were exuding happiness because all of a sudden you didn't actually have to wait to start planting cannabis with THC in it, because your state wants to make sure that the hemp growers get first crack at it. Is that accurate?
That is. What we had in New York was 700 hemp growers, almost every single one of them growing for cannabis, CBD, not grain and fiber. We maybe only have 5 that grow for grain and fiber. And so what we did in New York, since we've legalized adult use last year, as we try to stand up the program, we have a new law that allows hemp growers who were growing for CBD specifically for 2 years or more, who have some actual experience and harvesting experience, to be some of the first to plant an outdoor THC crop this spring. So that is kind of huge news for our program as our dispensaries gear up to open later this year.
And with the whole purpose of it, obviously, is when adult use opens, the state wants to make sure that there's actually product on the shelves. And,
Right.
This is a product that has to grow before it makes it to the shelf, right? And of course, there's testing and all that involved as well. So, when I read that, I knew that this was going to be a welcome development in the New York area. And I know a lot of people in business are eyeing New York State as just an untapped, huge market. In fact, Christopher, they're going to say in a couple of years, it could be even bigger than California. What do you think of that?
They can say that. We just have a very big population. I think it's not really apples to apples. California is just a giant state. That's all.
Speaking of giant states, the state of Texas, right? That was a good segue, wasn't it, Aaron? We got Aaron Owens, the owner of Tejas Hemp down in the Austin area. You are in the Austin area, technically, right, Aaron?
Yes, sir. Just outside Austin, Dripping Springs.
Dripping Springs. I love the names of the ranches down there. Tell us a little about your company, your farm, and how big a market is the hemp market in Texas?
Well, I myself got into the space pretty early, started figuring it out. And the moment we were allowed to cultivate in Texas was 2020. And so on my little farm, we grew 2 acres our first year, 4,000 plants. We did it. We made sure to do it right on the main road so everybody could see it and everybody would drive by. And immediately the whole community got excited and became a part of it. This last year, we scaled up to 3.5 acres, and we're working on scaling as we speak. As the market is concerned, the demand here is far beyond the supply. I think the challenge is getting your product all the way down to acceptable retail-ready consumer packaged goods. That's the biggest challenge for my perspective and us farmers that I can see. But the market is here, and the people want it. So we're going to be a contender in the long run, without question.
That's awesome. And I do know a lot of people who are, let's just say, pro cannabis / hemp down in that Texas area. And we certainly appreciate everything you're doing down there. And I do want to go back to Allan just for a second. Allan, most of the association in New York, are they indoor or outdoor growers? I'm going to guess outdoor.
Yeah, most of what we do is outdoor and larger scale, even on the CBD side. I mean, a lot of us are, vegetable operations, like myself. I have 200-acre farm. I supply large restaurant chains. You've probably heard of either New York City or California, like Sweet Green, Dig In. We're used to operating that way. We're not row crop farmers. And so when we do hemp for CBD, we have people who do 100 acres. We do 40, all hand planted, hand harvested, hang dried. We have massive infrastructure from the vegetable operations. coolers, freezers, like the whole deal. And so, that's kind of what we're doing here. And that's why I think the THC thing fits right in, because it's not like the row crop style of seed and fiber. So, and we're used to moving products around New York State. So yeah.
Terrific. I got a million questions for you, but I do want to go back to Aaron and ask kind of the same question. Again, mostly outdoor, right, Aaron?
I'd say in the beginning down here in Texas, most people went outdoor. I'd say a majority of what's making it to market after a couple of years is starting to get more indoor. I mean, there's a lot more guys doing sustainable or not sustainable, but regular indoor that's just happening on a regular basis. And it's becoming just a little easier to control. Like Allan mentioned, the vegetable farming infrastructure is what I've evolved to in this last year, and found a gentleman with a similar situation. And I'm learning that these guys have a very similar infrastructure and way to operate that we do. And so, we were able to scale up last year, and we're hoping to scale more to those acreage of 40 acres plus as we move forward. So on the cannabinoid side, you've got your indoor flower farmers. You got a few of us trying to do the larger outdoors. And then, of course, you have the industrial side, and there's where we go outdoor. And there was a couple of thousand acres for sure in Texas this last year. And it's just a matter of trying to figure out how to monetize those different portions of the crop. So
that's the age-old challenge of farming, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, here in New York, we're not doing a ton of the indoor for CBD flower, because what happened with legalization is that you could buy weed anywhere in New York. Every bodega, every delivery service, I was just in New York City, every park. And so as soon as that happened in March last year, hemp flower kind of stopped selling. And what we're doing mostly, we focus, at least at my company, is extracts for the most part. And so I think that's why you're seeing different markets, kind of these micro markets developing around the country, because it's probably a lot harder to buy weed in Texas than it is in New York right now. And honestly, we have indoor THC growers, but we're mostly importing California, Oklahoma, cannabis, $800 a pound. I mean, it's so stupidly cheap right now that it's everywhere.
It's the same
price
thing down here.
Do you guys know what the price of a pound of the legal cannabis in the state of Massachusetts goes for? It's the highest price in the nation. Anybody want to take a gamble and a guess on that?
Share with me that inspiration.
Yeah, 3,000, 4,000, I would guess.
$4,200. Now, you guys know supply and demand, that's coming down. There's more and more canopy space opening up all the time in Massachusetts. A lot of indoor grows. This is really where a lot of the investment dough went, because in New England, especially, this was a textile area. We have a lot of old factories that are just buildings just sitting vacant. So a lot of the investment people are going in and putting in these indoor grow facilities. But here's the challenge with this indoor is they're taking up 10% of the electric grid in the state for indoor grows. That's a huge amount. And needless to say, this is a plant that God put on this earth for a reason. And, we're all about sustainable farming these days, right? So indoor, outdoor, there's always going to be that issue. And I'm a big supporter of any solar powered indoor grows that can be started. In fact, I think that I'd like to see some incentives for people to put in solar power into their grow facilities, because I think we have to reduce our carbon footprint. Yeah, Aaron, you understand that, right?
Absolutely. What's unique about Austin is, in the big picture of Texas, Austin has been incentivizing local people to put up solar for over a decade.
Yep.
It wasn't focused around agriculture as much as let's just get solar into the infrastructure and start trying to have more renewable energy. And so if you're in the greater Austin area, there's a good chance if you're going to go into indoor production, you can offset that in some way. So that's helpful. The rest of Texas is not quite as caught up as far as a form of incentivization, or I guess that's the word, incentivizing. But we're getting there. And, the bulk of Texas, I think, will be sun grown. And as soon as we pave the way to further monetize these wonderful things like the grain and the fiber that we can do at a larger scale, I think that we're going to be a big contender in that zone. And I'm with Allan. The weeds coming in from everywhere. And the minute that legalization occurs, all of your indoor infrastructure down here, I would imagine, will convert just to fetch that higher rate.
By the way, I am shocked to hear that there's interstate commerce in cannabis in the United States. I'm shocked to hear that. Allan.
Who knew? Who knew?
Christopher, you got something? Go ahead.
I'm curious whether there's an issue that hits here in California a lot. First of all, the pricing that you talked about, Jimmy, you know, it used to be about maybe 5 years ago or so that the prices here were about $4,000 a pound. Now they're about $400.
I know.
Which is the big crisis that's happening out here. But there's another crisis that's happened here several times, smaller crisis. And I'm curious about whether you're seeing it in Texas in the hemp side and also in New York, which is about packaging. I know this seems like the very end of the stream kind of story, but in Canada, for example, the regulations on packaging are such that there's no branding whatsoever. There's the label of the brand or the logo of the company has to be the same size as the warning label, for example, and there's no pictures, there's no anything. So there's no branding whatsoever. In California, what's happened is they've changed the branding, they've changed the regulations about child-proof packaging several times, which means that companies have developed packaging and then they've had to scrap it all and then develop it again and then scrap it all. And it now goes against all of your environmental considerations because there's more plastic required and all of that. So I'm curious about whether Texas and New York is having issues with the way they're talking about packaging and if that's becoming a problem for either of you guys.
Yeah, we're going to allow marketing and branding. I mean, we have a bill right now in the legislature to charge $1 deposit, like we do in, cans and bottles for the cannabis packaging. So you have to bring it back to the dispensary to be recycled correctly. And on top of that, we also have a bill about creating sustainable packaging using biodegradable materials, hemp, or or other stuff. Whether these bills go anywhere, whether they pass, whether they have impact, I don't know yet. But New York we are acutely aware of that, packaging problem, and we definitely don't want to go down that Canada route with the no branding because that just really that's an exercise in futility, and it really just affects small businesses at the end of the day who can't get their message out there of what kind of differentiates them from everyone.
Agreed. Yeah. And New York is such a design center as well. What a waste of all that talent.
Aaron, how about you in packaging in Texas?
I mean, down here, we're pioneers in a lot of things, but cannabis isn't one of them overall politically. So we're kind of on the tail end of the evolution. And to be honest with you, we're not quite there yet. We haven't gotten that far enough in our evolution of politics and regulation to have that kind of guidance in the market. So we're still learning, from other examples. I mean, California, that sounds like a lot of troubles along the way. And Canada, I can't imagine not having, or, from our perspective, currently branding is completely promoted and encouraged. So I don't think we're just not there yet. I think we're still paying attention to you guys and just trying to learn along the way and try to set it up right the first time.
That would be a good thing. Yeah. Well, we've done all the wrong things. So hopefully everybody can see the writing on the wall and all those things. Hopefully you do better.
That's right.
Well, we're paying attention. We're trying to learn. The biggest thing I think for us that was the first big win is that we were unable to cultivate in 2019. And as we know in the hemp space, it was just a lot of people reached really far, exposed a lot of capital and did not get that capital back. And with the boldness of our people in our space down here, I was really grateful that we were put off till 2020. I think it saved a lot of people a lot of heartache. Yeah. And so that's been good.
But in Texas, Delta 8 is legal. Am I right?
So, yes, sir. I mean, essentially, you've got a bunch of people that love THC. And if you can go buy it at the store, they want it. And so when Delta 8 started to enter the market space, it was just a flood down here. It was just an absolute flood. And the legislation came in and they definitely set to outlaw it. And through the lobbying efforts of a couple of, key people here locally, they were able to deflect that. And essentially the argument of, hey, 85% of these businesses are surviving on Delta 8. And if we take this away, 85% of our infrastructure and investment will disappear. That was one argument. The other argument was, hey, we can't let these guys set a precedence and tell us how to do our business because who knows how that'll affect us later. So we were able to basically shut down those types of amendments. And as of currently, isomerization is legal or is not outlawed in the state of Texas. So I would say with confidence that Delta 8 and other converted cannabinoids are currently legal, and they're definitely being traded legally, openly.
And I don't think the industry up here that's got a lot of money attached to it on the East Coast and up and down the East Coast, they're not real happy with the Delta 8 whole Delta 8 thing. And there's a lot of movements to actually prohibit it.
I mean, personally, I didn't get on the bandwagon, and I've never been on the bandwagon. I do not sell Delta 8. I'm philosophically not aligned with it. And me personally, my experience has been one of I have a lifetime of investment and knowledge in this space, and it's about turning cannabinoids and terpenes into medicines. And I mean, as we move into industrial, I love that as well, but there's a lot of sincere study going on there. And when you can convert something and just get to the end real quick for cheap, and then you unfortunately blind a lot of the uninformed public, and they don't get to learn from the value of what some of us have. So, I can't hate it, because you want people to have access to something and you want to support the business, but that's just kind of the way it is currently. A few of us we're holding our ground and we're still moving forward. And one of the most unique things about 2022 is, I think, as a lot of us realize the values of THCV, and then we understand that a large bulk of that THCV is only going to be accessible through conversion. I kind of look around and I go, well, I'm glad we didn't outlaw conversion, because I may need to convert some CBDV down the road to replace some of this material. And that's going to be valuable, because I believe THCV has got some sincere benefits that can occur.
I got to tell you, the knowledge base about this plant, whether it's the hemp side or the THC marijuana side, there's so much depth to it. My head explodes with all this, and I'm not a scientist, nor did I ever really do well in science. So it's kind of odd. Allan, New York, I think, banned Delta 8. Am I right?
They did. They banned Delta 8 a year or two ago. Yep.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of pushback on it, but we couldn't really stop the banning of Delta 8 because we were just legalizing THC anyway. So it kind of seemed, you can only fight so many battles at once. And the THC battle was obviously the more important one. And now, Delta 8 is still around here in New York, but the reality is when you could buy just THC everywhere.
Delta 9, right?
Yeah, Delta 9 everywhere. With Delta 8 is kind of, and there was so much crappy Delta 8 out there. I mean, just garbage, and people are getting headaches and they felt like shit. And, it's kind of like, it's not really worth it when you could just buy weed.
Well, that's the complaint really from the industry, from the THC side, at least in California. This is the argument really, which is that Delta 8 is not being made to the same standards, the same quality standards, the same health standards, same chemical standards, and, cleaning afterwards, et cetera. And that was the problem. So that, a lot of it was almost being kind of cooked on the side kind of thing. And then that residual stuff was left in the product. And then there you got the headaches and all of that. So that's where people were complaining. They say, we work so hard in this industry to comply and to be safe and to be regulated. And then this unregulated product is coming in and it might hurt people, so it's actually maybe even a danger to us as an industry, God forbid something happens and then we all get in trouble, right?
One thing that definitely will help us all is legalization. So we can quit worrying about all these people spending their valuable energy on trying to circumnavigate politics and creating more problems and more challenges. Yeah. And unfortunately in Texas, once again, we're a little slow on that end of the deal.
Yeah. I got to tell you, but legalization is not what should be thought about now. The industry wants decriminalization more than legalization, because there's a lot of reasons why. And one of the biggest reasons why is they don't think the federal government is smart enough to manage a federal cannabis program.
They are not smart enough. And I'll tell you, I've had Senator Chuck Schumer at my farm for a press conference. I have him talking at a podium in front of a hemp field doing hemp banking when we cleaned up hemp banking in 2018, 19. And, his new bill is garbage. There's just no other way to say it. We've told him, we've told the staff. He keeps going out there with Cory Booker, and they're promoting this thing where the FDA is going to regulate and tax at 25% and social
Nightmare.
equity bullshit.
Right.
You know, it's garbage. And if that's the way federal legalization goes, nobody wants it. And I know some of the advocates want criminal justice reform, and that should happen immediately. Like, that shouldn't even be a conversation. That should have already happened.
I agree, 100%.
But it's the fact that, you know, the states have not had enough time to complete their experiments in social equity, in tax collection, in basic infrastructure testing. You know, we need a few years before we go full on federal, and we really got to figure out a better equity piece, because leaving that up to the federal government is a disaster. And so, you know, it's unfortunate to have to say that, but that's the reality nowadays. I think people kind of are starting to come around to that, where legalization federally sounded good, and now they're like, whoa, the FDA can't even get their act together with CBD and supplements. I mean, that's like the lowest hanging fruit you could do right there. And if you can't do that, you're not doing anything else. But hopefully for Texas's sake, you guys could legalize yourselves, and hopefully every state legalizes on their own and has their own thing going, and the federal government just kind of watches for a little bit, minus the safe banking, of course. That would be nice. And getting everyone, you know, real criminal justice reform at the federal level. So anyway, that's just my, you know, personal opinion.
We understand. That's why what a talk show is so beautiful. We want your personal opinion. Okay.
Right, of course.
Go ahead.
Sorry to Senator Schumer, and sorry Cory Booker and Ron Wyden. Your bill is garbage. You can call me. We can help you fix it if you'd like.
You know, Jim, last week I had a conversation with Gretchen Gailey, who's a conservative Republican who's in Washington, D.C. She's a publicist as well, but a cannabis advocate as well. So she's a pretty interesting combination of those two things you don't see together too much. And she said a really simple thing, which is why these federal government employees, why our senators and Congress people can't understand it, because they will not go more than 10 miles outside their office. They've never been to a grow. They've never been to a processing facility. They have never been to a dispensary. They have no idea what we're talking about. Right. And so they're legislating in their imaginations and in their, I saw Reefer Madness once, and I remember this guy in the closet, like they literally will not go to understand our industry, and therefore they could not possibly legislate it.
Yeah. I think some of our senators actually saw it in a movie theater. Okay. I mean,
I think they might have. Yeah, you know, they might have acted in it. Yeah.
You know, there's so many issues right now with our federal government. It's comical and sad at the same time, you know, that this is going on, and I don't see a lot of governance. You know what I'm saying? I mean, no. And I happen to think that the two-party system is so broken right now, I don't even know how to fix it other than to blow it up.
It'll be funny if it ends up being the Republicans who actually do federal legalization and they don't tax it or don't actually put any standards around it.
Right, just let it roll.
Right, but they could also ruin that too.
They could.
Now, let me ask you: do you guys know any other? There is a hemp lobby in Washington D.C., is there not?
The Hemp Roundtable is one of them. Yep.
Yeah, but it is distinguished from the THC cannabis lobby too, correct?
It is very different. And the biggest THC lobby is made up of the biggest MSOs in the country. So also, you know, depending on how you feel about that, you know, that's also the perspective the federal government is getting. And so for better or worse, that's what it is right now.
Right. We would not have an industry that's getting there as quickly as it's getting there without those MSOs. Okay. When you start an industry that's 26 billion this year, you do need some of those big players. You just do. I mean, because this is a capitalist society, is it not?
I would disagree with you, Jimmy. And I think you're going to see us do this in New York without the big players and with the farmers, with our existing infrastructure and with our legacy market. I think you're going to see something very, very different here in New York, and people will be surprised. And I really do think that.
Well, you know what? That's a great look. I want to see success for everybody. Don't get me wrong. But that includes the people that are putting the most money into the beginning of this industry. They should not be penalized for that. The industry itself has so many regulations and penalties. And by the way, I'm going to do a little, not a mea culpa so much, but the traditional media that's out there. I posted something that TJ Brandfeld wrote in Ganjapreneur, and I don't know if you guys subscribe to that or not, but he talked about media bias in the column that he posted, I think today. And
I just saw it. Yep.
Yeah. So Christopher, what was your reaction to that? We're going to go, actually, you know what? Hold that thought. Okay. Hold that thought. Aaron, can you stick around? Can you guys stick around for another half hour? Do you have another thing to do?
I have another thing to do, but I can come back later if you'd like around 6.
No, that's when the news is on and I'm going to be off. So the question, so no, but thank you. And Aaron, can you stick around or not?
I can stick around for a little bit.
Okay, I appreciate that. Allan, first of all, it was really nice to meet you this week. And thank you for coming on. I wish you and the whole New York Growers Association all the best in the world. I want to see sunshine and big old plants growing in upstate New York, middle New York, and even somewhere indoors in the city. Because New York, I think, wrote a good bill, and they really do seem to be focused on getting it done right.
They do, and they are funding this. So, like, to your point, if it's going to be the big companies putting in the money, yeah, that's what you're going to get. New York's putting up a lot of money right now, at least 200 million of capital to get this thing rolling. And so if they pull that, and at least I think we'll probably end up with about 500 million that the state's going to put up in grants and no interest loans for these businesses. And if that happens, that's what I mean. We're going to see something a little bit different. And that's where the federal government, I think, will be able to take notice. So anyway,
good luck.
Yeah,
right.
we'll see, right? We could be
Thank
hopeful. Well,
That's
thank
right.
you guys. It was great chatting. Jimmy, thank you so much. Nice
You
to
bet.
meet everybody else.
We're going to take our final break at now. We're a little late for that. And then welcome in one more guest. And this guy is from the Bay State Hemp Company. His name is John Nathan, and we look forward to that. Don't go away.
Pro Cannabis Media and PCM TV programming is supported by Revolutionary Clinics in Massachusetts, the #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 accounting solution for the cannabis industry. And by TCP's Style Lighting Grow Kit, all you need to grow.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. and we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Cannabis Media and PCM TV programming is supported by Revolutionary Clinics in Massachusetts, the #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 accounting solution for the cannabis industry. And by TCP's Style Lighting Grow Kit, all you need to grow.
Welcome back to Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled business of cannabis talk show here on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and I'm also joined by a regular on our Weed Talk News program and someone that also has his own show now, the American Cannabis Report on Pro Cannabis Media. And I'll be honest with you, is it following the news today? Because I don't even know that. I've been so crazy this whole week. Christopher, do you know?
I sure hope so.
Okay,
I sure hope so. I've got a couple of recorded, a couple in the can. So hopefully we're going to start throwing them up there.
Good. So we'd have a nice long live stream following this program is We Talk News. That's our regularly scheduled news program that we put together with between 10 and 12 correspondents from all over the country who call in a 90-second report about what's going on in their state. And it's anchored by Elena Pinto, who's a very, very talented anchor that used to work here in the Boston market on real TV, if you will. And that now she's working for us, and she's awesome. So certainly worth sticking around for. I am kind of monitoring our chat room. I do know that the guy who won the t-shirt is in that room somewhere. So I did get that, but it's very challenging for me to figure out, do I look over here or do I look here? So I stick with the camera whenever I can. Let's welcome in our panel for the final half hour. Aaron Owens from Texas, from Tejas Hemp, is going to stick around for a little while anyway. And now we're joined by a guy named John Nathan from the Bay State Hemp Company and his friend Ron Audette, who introduced me to John in order for him, John, to be on this program. So both of you, welcome to the Green Rush Live show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Hey, John, tell us about Bay State Hemp and what are the challenges specific to Massachusetts for a hemp farmer?
Sure, absolutely. First and foremost, my 30-second background, I became a medical marijuana patient in 2016. My life was personally saved by a specific cannabinoid called CBN, not CBD, but CBN, cannabinol. There was no access to it within my state. So we started Bay State Hemp Company in 2019 with a defined intent on proliferating every aspect that this plant has to offer. And after a 1.5 year long battle of writing a law, shopping it around, getting it passed, implemented by our Cannabis Commission, my company is now the #1 supplier of rare and minor cannabinoids to marijuana product manufacturers in the state. So we isolate those cannabinoids from Massachusetts certified industrial hemp. We source everything within the state. And now I'll veer into the issues. So a lot of the issues that we deal with are very similar to the rest of the country, which is there's a plethora of farmers who got into this that are struggling to find profitable outputs. And my first year that I was in business, before we ever extracted anything, I worked with a lot of farmers and made it a point to get out in their fields and ask them to allow me to volunteer, both on planting, harvesting, everything. It kind of is in tune with the philosophy. If you want to be the best winemaker, you got to do some seasons in the vineyard. So I didn't want to just jump into this and see this from my scientific perspective, but I wanted to really understand what goes into this plant, the nurturing and the growth of it. And what I found is that You know, I'm definitely going to stick to my lane. There's a lot of variables with growing. But what I found is that there's a lot of farmers and they put their blood, sweat, and tears and hard labor and hard work, and they pay their staff. And then people in my position try to take them for a ride.
Yeah.
And so we basically have made it our mission to the best of our ability, pay farmers above the national rate, and to make sure that the farmers that we work with are financially solvent so that they can continue growing. A lot of times I've seen people in the processing side of things, they love to bring a farmer in, look at their crop. They like to say, wow, you do great at it. The terps are fantastic and all these great accolades. But at the end of the day, that's not what farmers are looking for. They're looking to get paid. So we have been working over the last few months, because this law finally went into place 1 month and 5 days ago, to set up contracts for outputs that are going to allow us for this season to, instead of doing tolling, to purchase hemp directly. And we're going to be able to purchase it at a higher premium. When we started doing tolling, I really didn't like the industry standard of a 50-50 split. It sounds kind of predatory in my eyes. So we've done a 75-25 split, 75% to the farmer, 25% to us. And we did that for the first 2 years because we didn't really have the capital. I don't have investors, I don't have partners. So we didn't really have the capital to start making large purchases of hemp. So we would offer this tolling where it's completely equitable and leaning heavily in the farmer's direction, but left us with enough material to R&D for the last year or so that we could get our processes down, have enough crude on hand, and kind of get the gears turning. And I'm very happy to say that after 2 years of struggling, we are in the process of moving to a much larger facility. We're doing quite a build out, and currently sitting with my finance people, and we're going to be making good on all of those contracts and making sure that we put money into farmers' hands. If they're not paid, they're not going to keep growing. Massachusetts is not a great state for agriculture. We get one season, and the last 2 years personally, we had a drought in 2020. There was no water. And then the last year, I think it was kind of the opposite, you know, and obviously there's lots of supply chain issues with everything going on in the country. So if this isn't equitable and farmers aren't able to get a return on it, no one's going to grow hemp. This country, unfortunately, has not made the investment into the infrastructure to where we can produce textiles and rope and building materials and hemp seed oil. China has a stranglehold on that. So at the end of the day, a lot of what we're able to do is really grow for the cannabinoids. And I'm not denigrating anyone who grows for anything else. I'm talking specifically about our situation up here in Massachusetts, which is great. But on the same token, I think everybody on this session right now knows that this plant has way more to offer than even just medicine and therapeutic benefits. It's fuel, it's food, it's textiles, it's rope, it's everything you could imagine. And, one of the most profitable ways for a farmer to make money off their crop is to sell that raw hemp flower as smokable flower for the end user. In Massachusetts, while we have legal marijuana, for some reason, well, I know the reason, forbids the sale of hemp flower for the end user. We have tried proposing everything, setting it to 21 years old. This way we can make sure that anyone who purchases smokable hemp flower also is legal to possess marijuana. We've tried everything you could possibly imagine, and we took a consolation prize of allowing finished hemp flower to be sold in marijuana dispensaries. If you go to the shelves here in Massachusetts, they're absolutely full of hemp flower options. There's no enforcement on the local or state level in terms of retail. The only place that it's enforced is on us, that we're silly enough to get licensed and do things legally. So if I were to sell finished hemp flower into, let's say, a Cumberland Farms, which if people don't know what that is. It's a gas station convenience store chain up here. If I were to sell that hemp flower, I would get an infraction. I could possibly lose my license, but this stuff can flow over the borders every day. And I'm not saying I want it locked out of the borders. Every time we bring this up to the Department of Agriculture, they go, well, we can't enforce what they're doing out of state. I don't want to enforce what they're doing out of state. I don't want a single law or regulation anywhere on the books that prohibits the mobility and transactions of cannabis products. I just want the opportunity for us to compete. And I wouldn't even deal with hemp flower. We're extractors. And I'm sure people understand one of the things people don't do in this industry, whether it's hemp or marijuana, is figure out what you're good at and pick a fuck up. Can I curse?
You just did. Everybody does. Go ahead.
Right.
It's
Okay.
an adult show.
I'm from Jersey. It's hard. Pick a lane. You know what I mean? Find what you're good at and try to do it. I know I'm not a good cultivator. I can't keep 4 plants alive in my basement. There is no way that I'm going to try to grow 2, 3, 4, 5 acres. And there's a lot of people that do. There's a lot of people that say, okay, I did really good with my tent where I perfectly orchestrate the climate. Maybe I should turn my entire, all my spare land into a hemp farm. And they don't plan their outputs. They get way over their head. And then they call me asking if I want to buy hay that's testing at 6% CBD, covered in botrytis. So it's really, that is a good output for the farmer. That's an opportunity for the farmer to take the cream of their crop, literally, and put that into a jar and provide an experience to the end user that they are looking for. There's a lot of people that want to sit back, roll something up, smoke it. They want to taste the terpenes. They want to feel that effect, but they're not looking to become intoxicated. And I'm sure.
Hold the thought, John. First of all, I want you to take a breath.
Yeah, no, I could babble my ass off. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Aaron, when you hear his tale about the Bay State hemp scene, do you feel better about Texas or not?
They tried to outlaw hemp flower here as well. And fortunately, we were able to deflect that enough that we're still actively trading. And everything he's saying about a farmer's perspective is exactly right. I mean, the fastest way to monetize your production is hemp flower. And there's a massive demand for people that want to enjoy smoking cannabis, but not getting super lit. Like he said, you want to enjoy the terpenes and the many experiences these terpenes provide. And in the future, I think there'll be a type 2 cannabis that dominates the majority of what's consumed. But, we have 3 medical marijuana licenses in Texas, and they're very limited at their activity. And their lobby is working against us, the hemp producer, just because they're mad that they had to spend all the money to get where they are. So fortunately, we can sell hemp flower currently, and right now everyone does, and that kind of keeps everyone alive. And so, I feel those pains for sure. I would hate to be in a state where I would hate to be told I can't sell flower, because it dominates the market. It's just what's going on. And when you scale up cannabinoid production, whether you're good at it or bad at it, by the time it goes to an extractor and makes its way to market, there's only so much demand for that, from what I can tell, hence 2019, and the drop in the price of CBD.
You're correct. Not to jump back in, but that's kind of why, that's why I don't focus on the national market. I can't compete with Oregon. There's no way, shape, or form I can make a dime if I have to go head to head with Oregon, or any of these states that have large agricultural production, Kentucky. I mean, but because we keep it in state, our law is written that mass grown hemp must be the starting source for us to create these cannabinoids. We're actually kind of able to hold the line a bit. So we're a little bit above, but that means we got to pay those farmers more.
I like that approach a lot. I appreciate everything you said about wanting to support the farmer and make sure that they're solvent so that they can continue to grow, because that is a challenge. And paying above the national average is a huge step of faith from y'all's perspective. And I kind of wish there was a little more of that going on down here. I mean, in our environment, what happens is you grow it. Okay, you either have an extraction ability or a relationship you leverage, you get it extracted. 9 times out of 10, you find me, the guy that's raising cattle and goats and growing hemp, trying to figure out how to create a box for a cartridge or a bottle of oil. And I'm just lost in this consumer packaged goods world, but I'm forced to, or else my product's not going to monetize. And that's just in any industry that stretches you out too thin, any one small group or individual. So
I know I did tease this before we went to the break about media bias in traditional media versus us, pro-cannabis media. And the guy who introduced me to John is Ron Audette. He's also on this show. Ron, when you and I met at the Supernatural Organic Cultivators Conference a couple of weeks ago up in Sturbridge, you were very complimentary to what we do here. Now, you also recognize that there is media bias in traditional media, and they're always looking for something that the industry did wrong or a bump in the road just to kind of embellish a little bit. What's your feeling about media bias as far as coverage of this industry so far, not just here, but also around the country?
Well, maybe it all boils down to following the money. I mean, if cannabis has been in, the star attraction for years and years, I don't have a problem with that, Jimmy. I really don't. I mean, I pulled you out, the crowd the other day, and I really think going back to that 2 weeks ago, I really think that was a blessing. Not so much that we were both there, but when the farmers here,
right?
Just because John and other farmers say we're going to pay the farmer a wage above, it's not a license for us to go, phew, it's going to be a better year. We can put anything we want in the ground and they're going to buy it. No, we have an accountability to the processor and the person that's cutting that check. And if you go back to what we learned 2 weeks ago in Sturbridge, did we not hear from Dan Kittredge on how the farmer can build that soil to create less stress on the plant? Less stress on the plant means higher CBD, lower THC on the hemp side, provided we got a good strain to put in the ground to begin with or start off with. But from the cannabis side, you can get higher THC there as well. But we, the farmer, have to take care of our soil and our land. So I'm not too wrapped up in the bias on the media, Jimmy, because one, you're going to keep it real. And I got John Nathan in Massachusetts. So we're good. He's going to keep you guys in check. So we're good. We're all good.
Appreciate that. And by the way, I left Dan Kittredge a message this afternoon just to see, last minute, maybe if he'd be around. We will reach out to him.
He's in Denver. He's in Denver right now.
Well, then that's why you didn't respond.
He's presenting. He's a busy guy. He's doing a seminar.
I get it. I do want to get Christopher's read on the media bias when it comes to cannabis reporting, and then we'll get back to more hemp and farming stuff. But I was really intrigued with that article and that column that TG put out there.
I think that cannabis bias in the media is legendary, and I think it's a century old, and I think that it's embedded. And I think that perhaps you and I are renegades in our own way in trying to find the truth and talking to people like John and Aaron, who are actually got their hands in the dirt, or in the case of John, his hands in the oil, and are actually making these products and are actually then helping people and dealing directly with the people they've helped, right? Because this is it's a human experience and a human biome kind of experience. It's not the big monster. It's not the mythology, and that's what the media seems to have gone with for such a long time. But we need to talk to guys like this and to make sure their stories get out there, Jimmy.
Right. Well, that's why I started this company in the first place.
Sure.
John, I want to go back to CBN. Okay. And I don't know if you remember this, but Bo Wrigley, who I believe is the CEO of Parallel, Christopher, if I'm wrong, tell me.
That's correct.
That's right. He made a comment, I want to say almost a year and a half ago, maybe even, who knows? By the way, in COVID time, it feels like it's been 8 years, right? So, right. Bo Wrigley said that CBN is going to put Ambien out of business. What's your reaction to that?
I completely agree. As long as the as long as the FDA doesn't choose Ambien over CBN.
Right.
I've been through the FDA shuffle with a different company that I own, and I do know that they are going to protect their interests. But the good thing is that when you're up against pharma, there's very few lobbies that can compete, but one of them is ag. And when you take a look at who has invested into the hemp plant, you have the big box stores, you have Amazon, you have agriculture. So there's a lot of big money into it as well, and backing it and want to see it proliferate. CBN is the core of what we do. It's my personal mission, was that the next patient, the next adult consumer should not have to walk into a dispensary and educate the people behind the counter on what they're looking for when it's readily accessible from the cannabis plant. The benefit of us producing CBN is real simple. Because of the bottleneck and the high cost of the supply of raw marijuana, for a marijuana product manufacturer to source a kilogram of THC distillate in the legal Massachusetts market, and anyone on the West Coast will shiver, it costs anywhere between $20,000 and $25,000 a kilogram for Delta 9 THC. So when you step up to a company that has investors and a board, and you say, hey, look, we have this jar of liquid gold. We can sextuple our money overnight, stuffing it into cartridges with botanical terpenes, or we can destroy it to produce CBN and try and see if we can market to this niche. Well, because of the bottleneck of supply, people aren't willing to do that so much. They've tried it. They don't do an education campaign behind it. On our end, we have the ability to produce CBN at a fraction of that cost, provide it to them, and then on top of that, also kind of educate them on dosing and how to properly, and adequately place it into their products. We produce 2 tinctures that are very dominant in CBN currently. One is, I don't want to plug products, but we have a trifecta line, the Trifecta Relax. But that's not why I'm here. Okay. But we have a product called the Trifecta Relax, and it's I don't believe in single cannabinoid formulations, whether it's THC or anything. I believe that there's 115 known cannabinoids. I don't think more than 8 have been mentioned, throughout this entire call. So we're all in the front seat. And I don't believe the future is going to be any single star of the show. It's going to be the collective realization that therapeutic blends of cannabinoids are the future. That is my belief. So we don't do really single cannabinoid formulations, although there's a lot of demand and I'm not closing the door on it. But it's a combination of CBD, CBG, and CBN intended for another thing, it's a real big First Amendment issue on what we can and can't say about what our shit does. It really annoys me that I have something that will put you to sleep, but if I say it, the overlords might find me.
What you could say is perhaps that this is what people are reporting to me.
Sure. Right. Users report that it will
Users tell me that this is what it does for them. That way you're not promising anything. You're saying, here's what I hear, right?
I just call my product sleep.
Just a little help here.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So our Relax basically is intended for anxiety. It's intended to relax. We recently released a product called Blackout, Trifecta Blackout. And it is roughly 20 milligrams of CBN, which is about 4 times the entry-level dosage, 10 milligrams of cannabichromene, CBC, and then 10 milligrams of CBD. I sent it out to 50 people as a beta test after it was full panel tested before we released it. And it's knocking people out that are taking Adderall. And for anyone who doesn't know really what Adderall is,
it's speed.
It's racemic amphetamine salts, colloquially known as speed. So if people are able to go to bed on that, and the name Blackout, I had a friend of mine, and she had said to me, she was like, that's an intimidating name. And I said, good, because who we're trying to reach need to know what it does. This will cause drowsiness. I had my former boss actually sent me a text the other day, and obviously this is all anecdotal, but almost all cannabis information is anecdotal until we have federal funding for peer-reviewed studies. That said, he had hit me up and he had said, listen, I haven't taken my Klonopin for sleep in a month since I've had this. Obviously it's just one guy, you know what I mean? But we're getting these kind of reports and they're coming in.
There you go.
CBN is the future. It is what every single dispensary has been hitting me up for. I work with Parallel. So CBN is 100% the future. And I think the next step, which is very important, and we're begging farmers to grow, is a high CBDV, cannabidivarin crop. CBDV, we are able to process that into THCV, tetrahydrocannabivarin. That is not a tetrahydrocannabinol. It is not a THC isomer. This isn't another Delta 8 thing coming out of nowhere. This is real shit. Sorry, I swore again. Damn.
At this point, that's okay. But I got to tell you, if you could pronounce all those cannabinoids as quickly as you did, you could swear all you want, pal. It's like those are some of the toughest pronunciations out there right now, and you rattle them off like it's ABC. Hey, John, Ron Audette was right about you. Okay, I'm just leaving it at that. You can ask him what he said, but really enjoyed talking with you. I really want to sample some of the CBN that you have, because I happen to know someone who has a serious sleep disorder, and it would be a great thing to have that product. Aaron, do you do anything with CBN before we wrap this up?
Yeah, you know what? I have been doing something with CBN for a few years. I make a 3-to-1, 3 parts CBD, 1 part CBN, and then I throw 5% of my hemp-derived terpenes on top that we've extracted to make a formula I call Sleep, and I just call it Sleep. But really interesting that the gentleman would bring it up. I brought it up earlier on the previous discussion, is CBDV and THCV. What I've been doing for the last 2 years since we've been able to grow in Texas is I've been growing a high CBDV genetic. And what I have that's very interesting that happened in 2020, without getting too technical on farming stuff, is we ended up with the first ever that we've seen anywhere, anyone we know, is full spectrum THCV with concentrations in our extract up to 23%.
Whoa.
So I literally have a bottle of oil that I've been trying to get out there for the last couple of years. I call it Focus. And where it's led us is it's a 3-2-3 CBD, CBDV, THCV, is learning that people are losing weight, period. And I have a couple folks that were pre-diabetic that have reversed their pre-diabetic state. And where we are today is we're working with the University of Mississippi, and we're going to be engaging in a clinical trial this year on THCV and its effect on weight loss and glycemic control and type 2 diabetes. So
wow.
If you go to Tejas Hemp right now, I do have a bottle. It's called Focus. It was my first stab at making a tincture out of this particular genetic. And we're fired up about THCV. And to be honest with you, we have quite a bit of it, and CBDV, biomass, and genetics, just FYI. That's what we're focused on down here. And we're ready to do business. Just throwing that out there.
You got the seal of approval of John Nathan.
That is awesome. Everything he just said is fantastic. I'm really happy to hear that.
And there's no better compliment, by the way, than a peer, right? That you guys didn't know each other before this. And you reinforce what you're doing. So you know what? That's why I love this show so much. I love what I've been doing here for a couple of years of Pro Cannabis Media. And I want to thank all of you. Christopher, again, always a pleasure to have you on. You do a great job with American Cannabis Report. Stay tuned for that after our news show. John Nathan, quickly, how do people get to Bay State Hemp Company?
BayStateHemp.com. That's as
there
quick
you go.
as
I knew that. That's how I figured I did. Aaron, how do they get to spell Tejas Hemp? Go ahead.
Tejas is Tejas, and we're at TejasHemp.com or at Tejas Hemp on all the social media.
There you go. And Ron, I'll see you down the road again. How's that?
We're building bridges, Jimmy.
Yes, we are. Ron Audette, thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody from the Pro Cannabis Media family here, Dan French, who directs this thing, and Isabel Turner, who books all these guests and coordinates it. And by the way, there isn't enough cannabinoids in the world to get me to focus. Okay. So, if
try it.
I'll try anything. All right.
I'll send you a bottle for free, and then you can review it and give us feedback.
There you go. And I so appreciate that, guys, just taking your time out on a Friday afternoon to talk about this. And that's what this is all about. So for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, I'm Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Pro THC cannabis. we have reaction. The U.S. Department of Agriculture releases their annual hemp report, and the harvest reaches over $800 million. South Dakota continues to battle over voter-approved legalization, and a cannabis jobs report by Leafly shows 33% growth from last year. Plus, taking the odor out of cannabis, is that a good thing? On Weed Talk News, next. Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. I'm Elena Pinto reporting for Pro Cannabis Media. This week's top story comes from the Empire State, where opportunities are growing for farmers. New York lawmakers have approved a bill to provide temporary and conditional licenses to many hemp farmers in the state and would allow them to switch their operational focus to THC cannabis. Previously, vertically integrated MSO companies were the only ones given licenses to grow cannabis. Allan Gandelman of the New York Growers Association says this will help the recreational market start thriving, but there's a way to go.
I mean, this was truly the smartest thing the state cannabis office could have done in terms of building supply chain. Now they need to do all the other smart things, which is actually license social equity dispensary owners, provide the grants, provide the loans, get people stood up. We have to build a mentorship program, an incubator program. There is a lot of work to do. But now we know that there's some form of a supply chain. We have processors already, like people like myself. I've been an organic vegetable farmer for 10 years. I have a 200-acre farm. We grow vegetables. We've been growing hemp for CBD for 4 years. We have a full GMP, nutraceutical, kosher, certified organic extraction facility that we've been running for years. You know, we make products for, you know, people like Wegmans, for example, and we know what we're doing. We know what we're doing in the cannabis space. In the CBD molecule side, we're just going to add THC. And I really think this was a wise decision across the board. Now we need to add more licenses. We need to add social equity licenses. We need to build mentorship. But in the basic facts of not having a shortage, I mean, in the first few months, which is what all the states experience, and having something that people want and is affordable and is done by small businesses and not just like the few, you know, MSOs, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. And now we have to deliver.
So thanks to hemp farmers, hopefully the people of New York will be able to buy their weed and smoke it too, sooner rather than later. And speaking of hemp, the numbers are in, and hemp is making big bucks in America. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says farmers harvested 33,500 acres of hemp in 2021. The total value of that, $824 million, proving the plant has a lot of green to offer the economy. Be sure to tune in Friday to Green Rush Live, where our own Jimmy Young will chat with Terry Booth, the CEO of Audacious, a next generation MSO growing the cannabis industry from the ground up. Plus, several others will be there too to keep talking about hemp. But for now, let's check in with Debra Borchardt for this week's Green Market Report.
I'm Debra Borchardt, and this is your business update from the Green Market Report. Earnings season got off to a strong start this week. Weed Maps announced its revenue for the fourth quarter increased to $54 million, and that beat analyst estimates. The outlook for 2022 is for full year revenue to be between $255 million and $265 million, and that's an over 30% growth. Innovative Industrial Properties announced total revenues of $58 million for the fourth quarter. They also generated total revenues of approximately $204 million for 2021. Turning Point Brands, maker of Zigzag papers, reported its fourth quarter sales were essentially flat at $105 million. Now for the full year, though, their sales increased to $445 million. Really, the only big disappointment in earnings this week came from Kronos Group. They said that their third quarter revenue dropped by 80% to $20 million. However, that strong increase in earnings was overshadowed by a restatement of second quarter earnings and a whopping charge of $235 million. And on top of that, they said they're restructuring the company to cut costs. So it was a little bit of a mess. Well, this has been the Weed Talk News Business Update from the Green Market Report. I'm Debra Borchardt.
It's not just hemp growing in big numbers. More and more states are moving closer toward legal THC cannabis use. And this week, the battle over legal bud continues in South Dakota. Voters there approved legalization back in 2020, but it was invalidated by the state Supreme Court after a challenge by Governor Kristi Noem. And this week, South Dakota's Senate approved bills to legalize and tax marijuana in the state, as well as provide for expungements for low-level cannabis offenses. But here's the kicker. Governor Noem says she's still not ruling out the idea of a veto, saying she's skeptical about voter support for the reform, despite them outright voting for legalization 2 years ago. Another case of cannabis in a chokehold by a politician. So we'll have to see if Noem sticks to her guns or gets pressured out of that veto. More legalization news in Maryland. Last week, a House committee approved a pair of bills to put a cannabis legalization referendum on this November's ballot and begin setting up details for the program if voters approve. So the future of a budding industry looks hopeful there. And in New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy says people can expect to see recreational cannabis sales start up within weeks. Voters there also approved legalization back in 2020, but the logistics of the market have yet to be set in motion. Murphy says he hopes that by March, quote, you're going to see explicit movement on the medical dispensaries, with some number of them being able to sell recreational, unquote. Hopefully this holds true. Sticking with the East Coast now, Jessie Lynn Dolan has a look at more legalization efforts in this week's Vermont Report.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. To date, more than 30 Vermont cities and towns have opted to allow cannabis dispensaries within their limits, and the town meeting day vote will have a significant impact on the face of retail cannabis sales in the state. Town meeting day is March 1st, and cannabis advocates and entrepreneurs across the state are in a final push to ensure retail sales will be considered and voted on in their communities. Vermontawana's Ski Days continues this weekend at Smuggler's Notch, and they're planning a meetup at Magic Mountain on March 27th. Their Ski Can Festival has been bumped to February 2023. The deadline for entering the Hetty Vermont Hetty's Growers Cup has commenced. The award ceremony will be April 16th in Essex. Senate Finance is taking up one of the many cannabis bills currently in legislation. This bill would set fees for cannabis establishments and the Vermont Medical Cannabis Program. The Senate Finance Committee is also hearing testimony on another bill that is trying to sensibly designate small cannabis cultivators as farmers. The Vermont Coalition for Equity in Cannabis is asking for a new license category, which would allow farmers and small producers limited direct-to-consumer sales through delivery or pickup. They've also been asking for a nursery license, which would allow the sale of seeds and living but non-flowering plants to home cultivators and other licensees. The Cannabis Control Board had 2 meetings for public comment on Rules 3 and 4 this past week, as well as the 3rd event in their Social Equity and Economic Empowerment Networking Series. This meeting on navigating financing a cannabis business featured a question and answer with Cannabis Control Board Chair James Pepper on the upcoming pre-qualification period. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
Adult use cannabis markets in the US and Canada remain the most prominent regions globally for cannabis sales. But new reports show that Israel, Australia, and Germany's markets will develop considerably over the next few years, possibly giving those markets a run for their money. Weed only continues to grow on the global scale. And with that, we want to check in with Stephen Arthur George for this week's European report.
I'm Stephen Arthur George with SAG Services in Lisbon, Portugal. This is the European Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Cannabis reimbursements continue to increase in Germany. In the first 9 months of 2021, 130 million euros of medical cannabis reimbursements were registered. This does not even take into account the private insurance reimbursements. And on top of that, there's also a large amount of patients who are paying out of pocket with no reimbursement whatsoever. Down in South Africa, they're not talking about millions, but about billions. There's been a lot of support recently from the South African president. And the South African premier recently announced a $3 billion project. The government sees a huge economic opportunity and wants to move forward. Up in the UK, or near the UK, the Isle of Man is open to cannabis cultivation. The self-governing nation is welcoming applications for cannabis projects. A €100 million project has already been presented. Like South Africa, they clearly see the economic opportunity with medical cannabis and want to move forward. That's the European Cannabis Report. I'm Stephen Arthur George with SAG Services, reporting for Weed Talk News.
Back in the US, Leafly's annual legal cannabis jobs report is out, and job rates are as high as customers. The report found last year created an average of 280 new cannabis jobs per day, a single year increase of 33%. And Massachusetts seems to be leading the way in growth. The Bay State seems to be rapidly bringing more licensed recreational retail stores online, adding to the state's job count. Cannabis industry workers now outnumber lawyers, police officers, firefighters, and physical therapists in the Bay State. Ron Marshalsea has much more in this week's Massachusetts Report.
I'm Ron Marshalsea with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Earlier this week, I was able to stop by the open house of the brand new ACS dispensary located in Hull. And while I was there, I was able to talk with ACS President and CEO Stephen Werther about finally having a location days away from a grand opening.
We're very excited. It's been a long road and a lot of hard work, and you just can't get here soon enough. We've already been waiting about 7 days since we had our final inspection, and so it was submitted. So I'd expect, within the next few days, hopefully 2, 3, 4 days. And then there's a small 3-day waiting period, apparently. So I'd like to think within the next week we'll be able to get open.
Stephen and the rest of the ACS team are just waiting for that final letter saying they can commence operations. Jushi Holdings Incorporated is launching a series of branded cannabis products in Massachusetts, which includes the debut of some of its premium flower brands. Jim Cachepo, the CEO, chairman, and founder of Jushi, was quoted as saying, "We are excited to roll out our complete line of industry-leading brands and products to the people of Massachusetts. Through our high-performing retail stores in Tingsboro and Millbury and our newly expanded Lakeville grower-processor facility, we aspire to redefine the customer experience in Massachusetts." Jushi is also looking to acquire one additional adult-use dispensary because they plan to make more of their brands and products available across the state in the coming months. Finally, the BDSA, the leading provider of market research for the cannabis industry, has named Fernway as one of the top 5 cannabis brands in the nation to watch in 2022. The Northampton-based cannabis brand was ranked top 5 by dollar sales among vape brands in the Bay State for 2021. After launching a year ago, Fernway has quickly become Massachusetts' fastest-selling cannabis vape brand and is the market leader in the vape cartridge category. Their products are currently available at over 120 dispensaries. That's this week's Massachusetts Cannabis Report. For Weed Talk News, I'm Ron Marshalsea.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.
While California has been the heart of cannabis for quite some time, it's only just now that the state as a whole is considering cutting weed from the list of workplace drug testing requirements. If passed, Measure AB 2188 would end discrimination based on drug testing for cannabis metabolites across the entire Golden State. Christopher Smith has more in this week's California Report.
Greetings from the left coast. This is the California Roundup for Weed Talk News. Now, I bet this is being covered already, but I'm going to throw it down anyway. The Leafly Jobs Report just came out, and the numbers are delicious. The cannabis industry has now created 428,000 jobs. That's a 33% increase from a year earlier and includes 83,607 jobs in California, and one of those is me. California expertise is being called in to help our East Coast compatriots in multiple cannabis fields. Last April, California Attorney Omar Figueroa published New York Cannabis Laws and Regulations 2021, available on Amazon. And now just this month, the law offices of Omar Figueroa have opened an outpost in Brooklyn and begun taking clients since February 2nd. Figueroa brings Stanford Law School quality and deep cannabis legal experience to New York, so they won't have to reinvent the wheel, he says. But will New York learn from California's mistakes? Economist Bo Whitney says, only half-jokingly, if New York is doing the opposite of what occurred in California, they'll be successful. There's a new California beverage company called Drink Loud. Here's the twist. While prohibitionists are doing everything they can to limit the amount of THC that patients and consenting adults are allowed to buy, this new brand is going the other way. A Drink Loud beverage is 100 milligrams of THC in a bottle that's less than 2 ounces, or it's about the size of a 5-hour energy drink. Start low and slow, as they say, or share with friends. But concentrated goodness is an environmentally friendly trend in cannabis products that's bound to make a splash. Downtown LA has a new cannabis hub called the Green Street Building, and that's where you'll find a 5,500 square foot super healthy restaurant and lounge called Gusto Green. Gusto Green. Come on out and be among the first to order Zeiss Farm crispy hemp leaf dipped in chickpea batter and hemp seed oil, or crispy spelt pancake made with Zeiss hemp leaf za'atar and dill sauce, and wash them down with a dry town made with lemon, sage hibiscus, and master kush terpenes. Now keep an eye on terpenes as a flavoring for health-forward drinks. It's gonna blow up. You heard it here first. And I'm Christopher Smith, publisher of the American Cannabis Report, sharing California's cannabis jobs, legal chops, and drinks and nosh for Weed Talk News.
A lobbying organization in Michigan is pushing for more cannabis industry safety measures. The Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association is going after the state's marijuana regulatory agency for enforcement of its safety regulations. The group claims that state agents could do more to take illegal, illicit cannabis off the market. And they want to see those changes implemented in the form of action. And with that, let's check in with Michigan Normal Executive Director, Rick Thompson. Rick.
Hello again. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Is the new Detroit adult use cannabis business licensing scheme significantly different from the last one? Two attorneys quoted in a recent MLive article think differently on the subject. And remember, the first ordinance offered by the city of Detroit to license recreational cannabis businesses in 2020 was thrown out by a federal judge for having favoritism toward long-term legacy Detroit residents and licensing awards. The new Detroit ordinance, just proposed several weeks ago, offers advantages in licensing to social equity applicants, but denies a pathway to recreational licensure for half of the current medical marijuana retail shop owners in the city. Cannabis Council attorney Thomas Levine believes ordinance language which gives advantage to social equity recipients has passed legal challenge in other cities. Changing the focus from legacy Detroiters to social equity applicants might make the language less controversial, but Levine recognizes that somebody's going to get sued because of the litigious nature of the industry. Now, one of those frequently litigious attorneys is Denise Polisella, who represents some medical marijuana retailers in Detroit. She doesn't like to see them cut out. She said, and I quote, "This is not the action of a city council at all serious about seeing recreational adult use retail facilities in Detroit," end quote. Now, lawsuits challenging the ordinance can't be filed until the ordinance is actually passed by city council, and that seems several weeks, if not months away. Now, in full disclosure, I serve on the board of NORML of Michigan with attorney Tom Levine, and I did a real radio show syndicated on public stations across the state with Denise Polisella some years ago. Muskegon claims to have earned $290,000 in marijuana excise tax and licensing fees from their cannabis industry in 2021, and they've announced how they're spending it. $40,000 goes towards social equity, and $250,000 gets dumped into the general fund. Yep, that $250,000 general fund dump does more than pay for the city's licensing and inspection of cannabis facilities, but the $40,000 is being chewed up in individual programs, including $13,700 for marijuana educational displays on city-owned message boards and 5,000 cannabis storage bags with locks. Not exactly sure how most of us define social equity, but they are also sponsoring 5 different grant programs for cannabis license applicants who've had low-level cannabis convictions on their records. Now, the University of Michigan's C.S. Mott Children's Hospital is out with a new nationwide survey about American parents and their attitude towards CBD products. The poll surveyed 2,000 parents with a child between the ages of 3 and 18. Now, 1/3 of respondents said they didn't even know CBD was available for kids. 46% said they kind of knew about it, and only 3% knew a lot about CBD in children. 71% of respondents had never used a CBD product, and only 5% used them regularly. 73% would consider using a CBD product if all else had failed, but 74% still think you should be required to have a doctor's prescription before pediatric CBD use, and 83% think CBD should be regulated by the FDA. Now, it's important to note that 35% of all respondents believe taking CBD is exactly the same thing as using high-potency cannabis products. You can find those results on mottpoll.org's website. Tribal entities in Michigan who've had cannabis facilities on their sovereign lands may have a legal pathway to participate in the regulated cannabis market if a new bill becomes law. When we drafted the language of the 2018 legalization ballot proposal, we didn't include tribal entities because we believed we lacked the authority to compel the tribes to participate. Well, we were right, but the Michigan legislature's proposal gives an opt-in to the regulated adult use market if entities wish. Currently, those cannabis retailers on sovereign tribal lands can't buy cannabis from Michigan's cultivators and processors, so they either grow their own or purchase from medical cannabis caregivers. Tribal entities opting into the agreement would still have to collect and report that 10% excise tax on cannabis sales like the rest of the state does, and would also have to use the metric track and trace system. But one of the state's most active participants in the tribal cannabis industry, the Bay Mills Group, said through their spokesman, Whitney Gravel, that they welcome the chance to work with the state. She described it as extremely grateful and appreciated the progress after being, quote, blocked out of the regulated market for the past 4 years, end quote. Now, that bill was supposed to have a first hearing this week, but it was pulled for some technical fixes, but is expected to receive a first reading next week. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
Lawmakers in Missouri may be sweating their efforts to legalize adult use cannabis. The recently introduced Cannabis Freedom Act aims to legalize recreational consumption, provide relief to nonviolent cannabis offenders, and allow restaurants, bars, and other private venues to sell cannabis. But this week, Representative Richard Brown said he remains skeptical of the state legislature's willingness to pass such a progressive move on pot. With more from the Show Me State, here's Brandon Jones with this week's Missouri Report.
Hey again, everybody. It's Brandon Jones from Distribution Maven with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And yeah, there is lots of talk about recreational passing here in the next few months. There's lots of different initiatives, and this newest one we are very hopeful for. But like we said, the representative is skeptical, and we kind of all are too, that they're going to be able to just legalize it in restaurants and everywhere else be, pop up basically dispensaries. So we still think that's a little ways away, but we are very, very hopeful that recreational is going to pass here in 2022 here in the state of Missouri. My first story today comes from O Greenway. The reports are finally coming in from 2021, all the final year-end reports. And here in the state of Missouri, over 10% of all jobs created in the state last year were in the cannabis industry. Over 7,000 jobs last year alone came about just in the cannabis industry. And with what we're seeing on the horizon here with recreational passing, only looks to be more and more jobs. My second story is a little bit scarier story coming out of the Kansas City Star. Basically, 3 different dispensaries have been robbed just in 2022 here in Kansas City proper. So 3 different dispensaries have been completely broken into, robbed, and taken out. And a lot of the people around here are saying it has a lot to do with the fair access to banking. So a lot of these robbers know that there's a lot of cash on site. My buddy Daniel Jones with Waxy Brown Flower Power Hour, they do a radio show here in the state of Missouri, definitely thinks that the fair access to banking is a big reason why these robberies are happening. So hopefully we'll get that changed, and then we can have a place to put the cash, one that keep everybody safe. So again, I'm Brandon Jones from Distribution Maven with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great week.
Cannabis cafes are coming to Music City. That's right. Bud and Brews are planning to open its doors this spring, and it will be Tennessee's very first business of its kind. The menu will pair elevated dishes with legal hemp-derived THC-infused condiments from company Craft Cannabis. The restaurant also plans to serve edible dessert options and drinks infused with the hemp-derived THC. Staying in the South, let's travel to Florida for this week's report with Heather Allan.
I'm Heather Allan from Cannabis Law Report, bringing you the Weed Talk News Florida Report. For now, the state isn't budging on adult use cannabis, but a new survey by the University of North Florida's Public Opinion Research Lab revealed that 76% of Floridians support allowing people to possess small amounts of cannabis. The most supportive group was neither Democrats nor Republicans, but rather 90% of non-party affiliated voters. So while legalized cannabis may be on Florida's future wish list, it won't be happening on Governor Ron DeSantis' watch as he continues to maintain opposition to what he says is a putrid-smelling plant. In other news, while medical marijuana is a $1 billion industry in Florida, Black farmers are still fighting to cash in and secure a seat at the table. Despite a law requiring that one license be issued to a Black farmer, there are currently 22 medical marijuana operators controlling about 400 retail stores. However, not one license is Black-owned. Many Floridians believe that this delay mirrors the state's past discrimination because when the program started in 2015, the state required applicants to be in business for at least 30 years, which automatically weeded out minority farms lacking generational wealth. Florida has now reduced that time frame to 5 years, which is more achievable and realistic for the 2,200 plus Black farmers trying to find their way into the Florida industry. On Monday, the News Service of Florida reported the Department of Health is trying to impose a host of tough penalties against cannabis physician Dr. Joseph Dorn, including a permanent ban from ordering medical cannabis, a $10,000 fine, and a 5-year suspension of his medical license. The state charges were filed after Dorn allegedly failed to assess patients before ordering their medical cannabis. Dorn, whose Florida medical practice spans 3 decades, is accused of neglecting to conduct examinations of 2 undercover patients. Department of Health attorneys allege that instead of performing his duties, Dorn used his medical designation to liberally qualify medical marijuana patients after only performing a brief consultation and ignoring many of the requirements imposed by the legislature. According to Dorn's lawyer, Ryan Andrews, however, the only trick or scheme in the case is the act of sending intentional undercover patients to Dr. Dorn and a blatant attempt to entrap him into ordering medical marijuana based on falsehoods. The case comes amid Florida lawmakers considering a slew of new proposals intended to bolster the state's medical cannabis program and access to it, so we'll have to see how this one turns out. That's a wrap for We Talk News Florida Report. I'm Heather Allman from Cannabis Law Report.
And finally, have you ever had to convince your neighbor that that smell was probably just a skunk and not weed? Well, you may be in luck. Cannabco Pharmaceutical Corporation just released results on an extensive lab report on its, quote, odorless cannabis product. The study was conducted by Centroid, a lab that specializes in odor assessment. Who knew there was such a thing? And through multiple tests, they found the Cannabco product showed a mere 600% reduction in odor over regular weed. The report concluded the odorless cannabis was barely detectable within a 4-meter radius, while regular cannabis odor was disruptive and impactful up to a 50-meter radius. A smoke that doesn't put off any smell? Well, definitely goes to show you what a whole new world of weed it really is. And that's all for Weed Talk News this week. I'm Elena Pinto for Pro Cannabis Media. But I kind of like the smell. I don't know. What about you?
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.